Hi there, and welcome to Mike and Bikes, where normally I would be out riding mountain bikes and making videos about mountain biking. But recently I acquired this Skydio 2 drone, and I started incorporating the video from the drone coverage into my mountain bike videos. And by far, I started getting more questions about the drone than the mountain biking, so I thought maybe this would be a good time just to back up and do a quick review of the Skydio, my experiences with it, and more specifically, how it works with mountain biking. Now, I just need to point out a little bit about my qualifications. I don't really have any qualifications. Now, I have owned drones in the past, a couple of them, and I've flown a few drones, but I'm not what you would call an expert. I'm not going to be able to give you technical specifications between the different drones. So it's more just going to be my perceptions as a fairly novice drone operator, the things I like, the things I didn't like, and kind of how I've come to get the shots that I have. Now, I've seen a lot of pretty negative reviews on this Skydio 2 saying that it can't really do the things that it claims to be able to do. So I thought what I would do is just simply play some of the video that I've been able to get with it and talk through, what I did to get those shots. So I'll start with the first video I ever took with it and then kind of progress through the one that I took just a couple of weeks ago. You can kind of see the things, the tips, the tricks, things that I've learned to get the best shot with this Skydio. So with that as a background, let's go ahead and jump into it. Here we go.
Okay, so here you have my first mountain biking video with the Skydio. This is my first shot. I have maybe 30 minutes of flying time under my belt, so I'm still very much inexperienced with the Skydio. I pretty much just set it up and I selected kind of a random distance to have it follow me from, and I think I had it mostly set to follow me from behind and from a distance that was somewhere in between the closest and the furthest range. So I didn't really know anything about setting it up to make sure it got the greatest shot, but you can see it avoided a tree right there. It's still doing some good obstacle avoidance, going around some cactuses. I've got power lines that were to the left of me earlier in the shot, and it's following me pretty well. I think in order to understand what's going on with the tracking or when it loses you or doesn't lose you, you have to understand how it tracks you. So right now, it has a visual lock on me. And as I go around this corner, it actually loses the visual lock. And this was some of the video that it took after it lost me. So it's actually searching for me. It lost visual lock, but it still has GPS. It is trying to find the beacon that I've got in my pocket. And so eventually it finds that GPS signal. It hasn't gotten another visual lock on me yet, but it is following the GPS, and you can tell because I'm not really centered. It's a little, the video is not really very smooth. Right now it's just aiming at the tree, and so eventually though it continues to track the GPS, and when I stop long enough it will again get visual lock on me. But because I didn't know exactly how it was tracking at the time, I didn't know that I needed to stop to get another visual lock on me. And I just kept riding, and eventually it did find me again. So it tracks using a visual lock, and when it loses the visual lock, it will follow the GPS. So here's the thing about the visual lock. The closer it is, it will have a hard time avoiding obstacles like that tree because it has less room to work around. The further away the Skydio is from you, the easier it can avoid things like that cactus, because it's a little bit further and it has more wiggle room to go left or right of those cactuses or those obstacles. So I didn't know that really when I was setting up the shot or when I had it following me. I just said I want it following me from the back. I think that would be a cool shot. And then I would start riding. I didn't really take into consideration like where it was filming me from, what might get in the way, the angle of the topography, things like that, switchbacks, uphill slide, downhill slide. I really didn't consider any of those things. Again, I only had like 30 minutes of flying time. I think I had already had kind of one crash landing on it because I didn't understand exactly how it landed. But here's another example where it's got a visual lock on me now as I go through a couple of these switchbacks. and I think I probably have it following me from back right. So anytime I make a sharp turn, it sort of does this weird thing. It's trying to find my back right side again, right? And so now it lost me as it was trying to navigate that tree, and now it's in GPS mode. So you can tell because it's further away from me, I'm not necessarily center of the frame, but eventually it does, again, it finds me. And as I understood a little bit, well, you'll see in future videos, I start to get a little bit better at recognizing when it's losing me and getting it back so that I'm in frame again. But here, again, it loses me it's tracking GPS, so I'm definitely not center of frame, but it generally is following me and still allows me to use some of these shots in my video. Still kind of has a cool bit of a scenic kind of view to it. So you'll see I'll use this quite a bit in my videos. It's called the droning mode, and it automatically does that shot where it gets further and further away from you and kind of exposes the topography or the scenery around you. I also use some of the flight mode like this. That's flying it manually with just the app on my phone. Now, this is my second time with the Skydio, so now I have a little bit more of experience. I've kind of experienced how it loses me sometimes, and so now I start to try to be a little bit more careful about how I'm positioning. As long as it keeps that visual lock, it's going to do a really good job tracking me. But again, the closer I have it, which will help to keep the visual lock, makes it a little bit harder for it to avoid obstacles. So you're always fighting for kind of this middle ground. Like, I want it far enough away so that it can easily avoid obstacles, but I want it close enough so that it can maintain a visual lock. The other thing is that when it's closer to you, it definitely has a better, you get a little bit better sense of what the trail's like. So I can back it away from me so that it's better able to maintain a visual lock on me, or better able to avoid obstacles. But the further away it is, sometimes it doesn't make as interesting a shot. So here, as an example, it gets pretty far away at times, and I got comments that people wanted it to be a little bit closer to just get a feel for the trail a little bit more. I'll talk a little bit about that. I think I've got some examples of in future videos how I kind of dealt with that. But again, it's doing, it's tracking me around trees or through trees and pops out on the other side and keeps me in frame. So really, given the amount of experience I had at this particular time, which was about 2 hours of flying time, maybe 3 hours because the other video took about an hour and a half, it really does a great job. And again, here I'm just flying it manually, so you can see you can still get some pretty good cinematic type shots flying it with the app on my phone. I don't have the controller. The controller would definitely give you way better shots, but you get some pretty cool things just flying it manually with that app. Now, what I've started to do by this time, this is my third video with it. This is, by the way, this is Highline Trail in Sedona. It's a great trail. Ton of fun. I mean, look at the scenery, so it's tough to beat this trail, but I digress. So back to the Skydio, you can see I'm starting to set it up a little bit better so that it gets better shots. I keep it on the downhill side for the most part, which allows it to avoid the obstacles a little bit easier. It's higher over the obstacles. And as I make switchbacks down the hill, it's staying more on the downhill side. Here it's lost me. It's tracking GPS. You can tell just because of the distance, how far away it is from me. I'm not fully center screen. What's interesting here, so now it's still tracking GPS. I wave at it and it seems to recognize the wave, and all of a sudden it hurries to me. So here I'm starting to set up my shots now, so I have it set to the back of me. I wanted to get kind of a better feel for the trail, so I had it set back, trying to get the steepness. I still haven't learned at this point, and I still don't know exactly when you're trying to get really the steepness of an angle. Is it better to have it in front of you, better to have it behind you? A really bad part of having it in front of you is that it increases the chance that it's going to lose you. Now here, I try to take it down this really steep, narrow canyon, and it just isn't having it. So I didn't know if it would do this. I was a little skeptical, but it got pretty darn close. If it had just gone another 10 feet, it opened up again and it would have been fine, but it couldn't quite make it through. So this is where I should point out what happens when it loses both GPS signal and it loses the visual lock, which it did there. In that case, it will revert back. It will go to the last place that it had a GPS signal. And so in that particular situation, I had to hike back a couple of 100 yards until I could find it again. I eventually heard it. It wasn't directly on the trail. I heard it off to the side and was able to bring it back to me. A little bit scary your first time you lose the drone and not knowing where it went. So it just backtracked to the last place it had a signal. So this, it actually lost me a couple times towards this is the bottom side of Highline Trail, and the trees get a little bit taller, and this is where I had it tracking me really closely, which means it has a really difficult time avoiding some of those obstacles. And this again is video here where it lost me and what it did when it lost me. So I can still use some of the video when it's lost, but had to backtrack a couple of times to get it again. All right, now, third video, now I'm starting to get a little bit more adept on what to do with it. And you'll notice I start to use some editing so that I can keep the drone further away, but I still get a closer shot of me in frame. So right here, there's kind of the normal, that's the distance the drone is away without any editing. And then I think I cut to another clip where you can tell I've edited and I've just, there you go. So I just increase, or I just enlarge the shot. So using editing can help as well to get better shots. It allows you to keep the drone maybe a little bit further than you want it, knowing that after the fact you can edit those shots. Now as I start to go down these switchbacks, I'm going back and forth, and I decide rather than keeping it to my back side or to my right side, I just keep it downhill, which is one of your options. So you can just keep it at a certain position or angle from you. So this is always going to be on the south side of me, I guess you could say. That allows it, you can see all the cactuses that it just avoided. It avoids all these trees, all these obstacles. I have it pretty far away from me still. So easily avoiding some of those obstacles, so it keeps me in frame, locked in, and then I can use the editing if I want to get kind of closer shots for some of these things. Again, going around the cactuses, around trees, keeps me, still has a visual lock on me. This seemed to be like kind of the sweet distance here. If I had it about this distance from me, it was able to easily avoid obstacles, keep me locked in, but didn't lose me so that it had to use GPS. You can almost always tell when it reverted to GPS because, you know, it would get much further away and I wouldn't be in center of the shot. So lost me here again, but I cut that out. Here it's pretty far away from me, so it easily avoids those cactuses. And it's far enough at this point that I would need to use editing to get kind of the shot that I really wanted. Okay, that's going to bring us to the last video that I shot. This is the Hangover Trail in Sedona, Arizona. Another great ride if you've never done it. You get some of the scenic views that you get from the Skydio. You'll be able to see another one coming up right here. So, you know, again, it doesn't have the range, the distance, the height of a DJI, you know, like the Mavic Pro, which is the other drone that we have. But it still gets some really good cinematic type shots. I'm definitely taking more time on this one to set up my shots at this point. So I keep it on the downhill side. I try to avoid obstacles that might be presented as they come up. So I probably would have been okay keeping the drone to the back of me at this point as well. It would have probably done a pretty good job avoiding the obstacles. But I thought the side view would be a little bit more interesting. As I'm watching the video, I wonder if maybe I could have moved it lower. That would have been an interesting kind of angle to see it a little bit lower. Still pretty far away from me. I think that one was actually intentional so that I could get that scenery there. It's a pretty nice little shot in Sedona. It's tough to get a bad shot in Sedona. Okay, watch here really quickly. You'll see me use the beacon right there. I use the beacon to move the drone. You just point the beacon at the Skydio and move the drone to where you want it. And that is sort of that's a life changer when you're really trying to set up your shots, because rather than having to pull out your phone, you know, do a lot of work there, you just simply plot your beacon and you point at the Skydio, point it to the direction you want it, where you want it to follow you from, and then it will start following. It's really cool. So here again, thinking about setting up the shot, I've got some significant rock structure to my left-hand side as I'm riding. and the GPS is going to do wonky things here. Under rock, the GPS is just not going to pick you up. So you have to think really like, how far do you want that drone from you to make sure it keeps a visual lock? How close is too close because it's going to lose me behind trees? And it lost me a couple times in that area. I had to slow down multiple times, wave at it, bring it closer. But then when I got around to the backside, which here's the backside of Hangover, very cool trail again, get some good scenic shots here, but moved it down to the, it's on kind of the downward facing slope, so it easily avoids any obstacles, keeps me in frame, keeps me locked in. I think at some point it does lose me here again and track GPS, but it looks like it keeps me pretty well in frame. Someone else had mentioned that it would get confused with other people when they're in your shot. I didn't pass a lot of people on this trail, but I did just pass that lady a second ago. It didn't seem to have any trouble keeping focus on me. And I think I repositioned the drone again to keep it on the downward slope again. One thing I would say also, I did pass a couple people there. There's another person here on the right-hand side that I pass. There is an issue with like the noise of the drone. This one is probably no different than the Mavic Pro that we have. It's about the same. We've flown them side by side. They sound about the same to me. But the great thing about this drone, because you're having it follow you, it's really, if you do pass people, it's a pretty short annoyance for them, right? They'll hear it and I'll be gone within probably 15 or 20 seconds.
Okay, so hopefully that's given you a pretty good feel for what the Skydio 2 has in terms of capabilities and really what the responsibilities are for the drone pilot to really get the best shot. The need to set up the different shots and really prepare for the angles and kind of the background and the things that you think will be important to getting the best shot. And hopefully that sort of also tempered some of your expectations. Maybe you've seen all the hype about how it can do everything and anything that you want it to do. And while I would still say it's an awesome drone, I really love it, I enjoy it, I think it provides a really neat perspective in terms of what it gives to mountain biking. So I think it gives a different flavor, a different feel, helps people really experience the trails in different ways, and also gets some of the scenery that you don't normally get with just over the handlebars from your GoPro coverage. So anyway, well worth the money, I think. It's expensive, but well worth the money, and it really, I think, adds to the entire kind of the video experience in mountain biking. So that's my unprofessional, non-biased opinion. I really enjoyed it. If you have questions about it, please put them in the comments below. And if this video has been helpful or useful, please like and subscribe, and I'll keep doing these kind of videos. Thanks a lot, and we will see you on the flip side.